Hello friendos, Emily here with a sim build video. I decided I'm going to try and, be one of the cool kids. And instead of just, putting on music and showing the build, I'm going to slow down the build a bit so you can actually see what the heck is going on. And I'm going to start talking over them. Maybe I'll find out I actually have some wisdom I can impart. It's not super likely, but who knows, maybe that is how it'll turn out. And also, when I do have a bit more in-depth ideas when it comes to certain videos, it'll let me share those ideas with you, like some of the gimmickier stuff. Which is why, of course, I started with a not as gimmicky build. This is just your basic small family home. I did want to try and have one where, even though it's 2 stories, it kind of almost feels like 1.5 stories, on account of the fact that the second story really only is on about half the house. I've seen a lot of houses that have this kind of look, and I'm not always sure how space efficient they are, but I think they look pretty neato burrito banana fanafofito. On top of that, I really wanted to make this look a bit brighter than I tend to go with a lot of my exteriors. I feel like I tend to lean towards either neutrals or pastels. In my defense, I think that's honestly what a lot of the color palettes for the exteriors are. But I wanted this one to have a bit more of a bright and inviting feel to it. That's why I did the green reflective roof. That's why I did the bright green porch that matches the roof. That's why I've got that blue trim and blue columns going on. I just wanted this to be one of those houses that some neighborhoods have, where when the kids are like, okay, I'm gonna give you directions to my mom's house so you can come over and we can eat pistachios, because that's what kids do, I guess. And they say, okay, so you know that you'll see a house that has a bright green roof. When you see that house, you're going to need to turn right. This is that kind of house. Now, the Sims that I have occupying this house are Killian and Florence, who are actually the ones who have shown up in the most videos so far. Initially, I created them for my wedding venue, Kiss Kiss Fall in Love, which had lots and lots of cherry blossoms and was very appropriately sappy as a result. And part of why I made them is as a pretty gay lady. I feel like there aren't really enough representation of 2 more butch presenting. Honestly, both Killian and Florence are a bit more softer on the butch scale, but I wanted to have a butch wedding, because it's not really something that is done very often, and I personally have a real fondness for butch aesthetic. So I sort of went with a nerd butch and more of like a handy girl type look. And I did not expect to love these character designs quite as much as I did, because frankly I think they're the only ones who've gotten anywhere near as much attention from me. I'm much more likely to make new Sims for building as a rule. I'm trying to do it a little less, if only because my Sim downloads aren't really super hot. I haven't even been uploading my Sims as much as I used to because I realized people aren't into them. Though, if that changes, I could upload all of them. Maybe make a Meet the Sims videos. So anyways, I have the Kiss Kiss Fall in Love. That's where they debuted. And then I did their honeymoon location, because to me that made sense. It was a romantic cabin for 2, I believe. Then I did the Neapolitan Cafe, which I decided would be Killian's Cafe, because Killian is a baker. And then I made the observatory, and I'm like, wow, this is a really nerdy place. Do I have any really nerdy sims I can use? And the answer was yes. That sim was Florence. And now finally, after 4 videos, I went, maybe I should give them a place to live. It's also a pretty reasonable progression from the honeymoon. After they get married, they look for a new house together. I haven't obviously made an apartment they had to live in because you can't play with Sims that don't have a home. And it was honestly a pretty nice apartment. If I could put up apartment builds, I probably would have done that one a while ago, but alas, it was not meant to be. Excuse me. So this is more like a first home for a family. It has 2 bedrooms. One is for Killian and Florence to sleep in at night, as most people do with their bedrooms, and the other one is currently a guest room, though hypothetically it could also be a future nursery or a bedroom for another little kid. And that's sort of the idea I was going for, that this is a house with a new beginning. Like, I'm currently living in an apartment. It's me, Tony, Ree, and Jimmy basically lives here with how much they're over. But I like to think about one day living in a house, and honestly, I think the house I built in this video is one of those houses I'd like to live in. Not as much as some of the other houses I've built. I've built some houses I'm super crazy about, but this is one of those more realistic ideas of houses I will live in than some of the more interesting things I have made. I especially am fond of this outdoor patio area. I shouldn't call it a patio, the backyard, I guess. I haven't really done enough with backyards, I think, considering how many families have backyards. It just seems a little silly to me that I have not properly utilized them as much as I should have. Though, until we get to the part where I actually do all the backyard building, it seems silly to talk about it. Let's talk about the lighting. I have had a poor habit with lighting and making it the last thing that I do, which is not the best idea, if only because sometimes when you're building, you can be like, okay, I know what this is, I know what that is, I know what color it is, but when you're watching it later and you go, wow, that room's dark, I have no idea what's going on in there. If I could remember one thing every time I build, it would be to, for the love of heck, put up your lights early. If you decide that, a certain type of lamp does not actually look good in the room, just replace it. But it's better to have that lighting to start with and then switch it out for something with character later than to hold off because you think there might be character and do your lighting then. I like this little kitchen. I, in general, have a real fondness for little kitchens, though even though I tend to bemoan how tiny my kitchen is. I do a lot of baking, and in order to actually bake, I need to clear off the dining table and do all my mixing there because I have basically no counter space. Between the microwave and the toaster, I basically have no space left. And it is sad. It's a pathetic little apartment kitchen. So despite the fact that I want to have a nice big kitchen where I can bake as much as I want, I always tend to make these charming little tiny kitchens. Though granted, it has plenty of space for a sim to bake and do all their fancy cookings, so perhaps I'm just being a little silly when I think there's a juxtaposition there. I think my hardest thing with kitchens is deciding which small appliances I need. Like, part of me wants to add everything. I want to put an ice cream maker in there, I want to put a popcorn popper, but really, The Sims, even though I don't even play my Sim files very often, I feel like I should be taking into account what my Sims would do if I played more often. And chances are I'm going to be making popcorn every day. So instead, I usually put in a coffee maker because despite not drinking coffee myself, I know a lot of people do. Sometimes I put a tea maker if I think someone there likes tea. In this situation, I think Killian is the tea drinker because Florence is the one who probably stays up late doing programming because that's her job. I feel like one thing that I'm doing quote unquote wrong with Sims is I don't really design super well, in the sense of I don't come in thinking, okay, this is the type of home I'm going to make. This is the type of interior it's going to have. I tend to just sort of be like, okay, here's these 2 Sims I made. Here's the kind of characters they are. Now what kind of home would they have? Whether or not it's a more realistic experience, I don't know, but I feel like I should be taking advantage of the fact that I can design any house, not, building realistic little holes. This is the part where I could not figure out what in the world to do with this room. I like dining rooms, generally speaking, but I also haven't lived in a lot of houses that have them. Like, I've tried so many times to use juice bars and stuff like that, but to very little avail. It's always felt awkward to me whenever I made them. What I ended up doing with this one is actually just making a laundry section. And I personally think that was the best option, because with the pastel pink of the room, that sort of cute laundry room aesthetic that happened here with the brighter colors, I think that it looks homey, which is generally what my builds tend to focus on, is looking more like a home than design. And of course, that isn't to imply that well-designed homes don't look like homes. That would be a very rude thing to say, and frankly, very inaccurate. I think I just tend to bring in my own experiences rather than playing around with the idea of what potential homes can be, unless I'm doing some kind of gimmick. So one of my resolutions is to try and get more creative with my homes in a way that isn't always gimmicky. We'll see how that goes, I guess. I feel like I don't really use the room tools enough. Like, I can grab a room, make it bigger, make it smaller, and that's honestly one of the greatest things that I liked about Sims 4 versus the other Sims games. But I don't really utilize it enough. I feel like one of those things that always looks awkward in the videos is when I keep zooming out and then zooming back in and then rotating some more and then doing the thing. I just need to get a feel for what the mood is. And it probably looks really weird when I'm not talking over it like this. It probably still looks weird if we're being honest. But at least now you can focus on something other than the you spin me right round effect of this house. I love that little plushie. That little outdoor retreat moose with a hat. It just seems like a little souvenir you'd get from someplace, and it wasn't very expensive in terms of quality, but it was also kind of expensive because it was a souvenir, so you feel like you have to, make proper use of it and display it all the time. So people come over and there's just like this stuffed animal sitting out, and they're like, why do you have a stuffed moose on your mantle? Like it's something important. And then you gotta say like, oh yes, well it reminds me of this, my memories are really what's important, instead of pretending like you have to justify spending money on a moose. Here's another piece of life advice. Just buy the moose. Don't justify it. You don't have to pretend to be an adult. Just buy the freaking moose. This is one of the weirder tangents I've done. I like the idea of studies. I like the idea of rooms that are just rooms where you keep your books and you go off and work on your stuff in solitary. Since we tend to be a bit more of an artistic family, I tend to think more studios than studies. Or when I think in terms of extravagant, I think of having a library. Dear God, I would love to have a library. Just a room filled with books and plants and maybe also a bird. I feel like I'd keep my bird in there. That would be the bird home, the library. Because in my head, this room also has big windows. There's all this natural light in there, and I can go in there for some quiet time and read a book and have the birdie out, and such an idyllic setting in my head. Here, though, it looks a little more like an at-home office space, because Florence essentially uses it as that. She is a programmer. I forget what part in the career she's in, because basically she just grows up the career chain when I come in and get footage for things, because Florence is very good at what she does, despite the fact I don't really play the game super often. Oh, that living room was the death of me. I have a hard time figuring out how much space is supposed to be between the sofa and the TV, and that is a consistent issue with me, because I don't necessarily want huge living areas, but also I feel like you're gonna go blind if you sit that close to the TV. I feel like it's been approved as just like something parents say, but the concern is still real of don't sit right next to a TV, especially those really big TVs that I always give my Sims because I'm living my dreams through them. And of course I love that lady statue. It always looks good, whether you keep it big, keep it smaller, if you make it big, make it even tinier, it always looks good. It's a base game item, but it's really classy and I love it. Sometimes things are good. Oh, I love doing that move everything cheat and just raising items that are not supposed to be on tables. I don't like all those like small items that you can't put on a table. That seems really silly to me. Like, if an item is that size, I should be able to put it on a coffee table. I don't care if you intend it to be on the floor. It can go on a coffee table, and you're not going to stop me from putting it there because I have access to cheats. Can you imagine if that was like in the real world? If I got like this plant, and I'm like, well, it's a floor plant. This is let's say it's a rubber tree. I have a beautiful rubber tree. Oh, and I've got this low coffee table that would give it a little more. It can sit like a little higher than and be a real conversation piece in the room. Well, looks like I can't lift it that high. I can lift this other plant up there, but this one, I can't lift it. It's got to be on the floor. That'd be nonsense. And it'd be confusing. It'd be some confusing nonsense. So I guess sometimes it is good that the Sims is not the real world. So this here's the guest room. It has a very classy look without necessarily having any personality at all. Oh no, this is the actual room. Oh, well, shot myself in the foot there. But still, it doesn't have a huge amount of personality compared to like teen rooms or young adult rooms, because frankly, this is their first house. In terms of their personal spaces, they have stuff already. Florence has her office. Killian has... Well, for Killian, actually, as a baker, the kitchen would be considered more of her own space. Or the grill in the back. Did I put the grill up? Okay, spoiler alert, maybe. There's a grill. Oh, I love that clown picture, too. I collect dolls, viewers. And I don't just collect dolls that are like, pretty porcelain dolls. No. I have some creepy ass dolls. One of my dolls has no arms, no legs, and it has a little voice box in its chest. So if you move it, it goes, oh. So what do? I frequently grab it and shake it. So the oh. Long story short, definitely haunted. Why am I mentioning the dolls, you might ask? Well, that clown painting reminded me that one day I'd like to have a guest room. I'll take all of my dolls, creepy or otherwise, and put all of them in the guest room. I would have shelves lining the walls where the dolls sit, and they all face the bed so they can watch my guests sleep. My goal, you see, is to never have guests. I don't want any strangers sleeping in my house. The dolls are my last defense. Or maybe I just really want some ghost roommates. It could be a little bit of both, honestly. It's hard to say. I really like that front porch. A lot of times when I'm building, I'll either really have a front porch with character or a back porch with character. I think in this case I did a decent job of having both of them be kind of charming. Especially, I think a lot of it is that bright green. Like I said earlier, I tend to use a lot of neutrals, but I think taking that chance and using like this really bright color for a porch, it really gave it a lot of personality and I think really made it a much better porch. So I guess the moral here is don't be afraid to paint your porches bright green. Or I guess in general, don't feel like you have to stick with the neutrals. Oh, there was a spoiler. There is no grill yet. think in general, outside of like some landscaping things I do tend to neglect my outdoor spaces. But in this video, I actually did a really good job with both the front and back outdoor spaces and utilizing them. Oh, I hate that. Did you see that, viewers? Basically, if you have a deck and you push it against the fence, the wall, sort of wall of the deck will override the fence. Oh, I hate that so much. I wish I could not have to worry about that, but apparently I am just going to have to leave a gap in between the patio and the fence, because otherwise it will replace my fence with that little cute patio fence I got going on, which is adorable for the patio, but I like having that privacy fence. I also like having dirt paths. I feel like, you know, in the real world where I actually live, I'd probably actually make a path, probably with stone or tile or some kind of mosaic-y thing, knowing me. But when it comes to Sims, I just like having the dirt path, like it's something you walk through. I think it reminds me a lot of Animal Crossing. I remember I've always been really crazy about using paths in Animal Crossing. And I know now that in New Leaf, if you replace a path pattern, it'll override it. And I can't remember if it always used to do this or not, or if I was just being overcautious and dumb. But I would wipe off all of my paths so I could put down the new pieces. And I always liked how it looked to see the grass wear that used to be underneath the path, that was worn away by the paths, which is also kind of silly because if there's a path there, you're clearly not walking on the grass. And no, it's not just formed by the path being there, it was formed by the fact that you walked on it. And sometimes I threw on the idea of just keeping the grass there. But also, I tend to step away from Animal Crossing and then return to it again. So I can't trust a dirt path to be consistent. Not the way I can trust tiles. I'll always trust you, tiles. Always! Maybe I should make use more of like the stepping stone type items, or because I've got a few of them, and have more curated looking paths. I feel like I might be at a point where I'm just defaulting to dirt paths a little too much, and it doesn't look as much like it's a thing that I've made the active choice to do as much as just something I do. It's the voodoo that I do. Woohoo. Likewise, that lavender. I adore that lavender plant. But gosh, do I use it everywhere. Because I like it. But also, it's just almost a default. It's not even a decision at this point. I really need to get better putting myself on my comfort zone. I think I may have a little more building info that I lost, because usually I go right to that clip. But anyways, this is the house that I made. And it's the house that Florence and Killian live in. And I don't know why that one clip went so much faster than the other. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this video and my rambling thoughts. I'm definitely new to this. It's going to be one of those things that hopefully gets better as time goes on. And it'll probably be a little easier when I have some more interesting... When I have my gimmick builds. When I have my gimmicks, I'll have stuff to talk about. Like the gimmick in question. But I think for my first voiceover, I could have done way worse. And honestly, I do love this house. It's not my most interesting necessarily because it doesn't have that gimmick, but I am really fond of it. This is probably a house that I would consider buying while in the house shopping phase. I'll have this up on the Sims 4 gallery, as usual, under the hashtag Valiant Attempt Gaming. If you download it and decide you want to renovate it or change it or something, go ahead and also slap that tag on there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.